Good evening, everybody. We're just waiting for some more folks to join us. I'm fortunate enough that my wife is in isolation with us here in Stamford, and she's being my assistant here. And then my daughter up in um, Boston is helping out remotely. So together, we're going to make it through. And I think that's really the theme for this whole time is it's all about our being connected and sharing and supporting one another. But I see that we have folks coming from as far away as New Zealand, I think, and Canada and the West Coast. So great to see people are able to join us for this evening's program. I'm wondering if people, audio is good. Thank you, Erica. Erica has been our assistant at Anam, Cara all the time, and so she's pitching in and helping out as well, remotely. So I hope people have had a chance, in the email yesterday, there was also links to be able to download PDFs of the chanting sheet that we use with the various mantras, as well as for next week, we'll be doing our, the fourth Thursday of the month Heart Sutra. So that chant is also available. So you can download that or bring it up or whatever you'd like to do. As we're waiting for a few more people to join us. It's a good time, and this is part of what we'll be doing for the meditation practices this evening, and of course we do it throughout the different programs. Take a time to slow and deepen the breath. So much of how we respond physiologically to stress and tension, it has to do with what also happens to our breathing. So even as you sit comfortably in your own home or wherever you might be, allow your attention to come to your breath and just start inviting it to slow and deepen. Just allowing the breath to slow and deepen. Feel the gentle movement of your belly, your diaphragm, as it rises and falls, as your tummy extends a little bit as you inhale and goes in as you exhale. And just inviting the body to slow the breath. And then inviting the mind to just ride on the waves of the breath. The mind has been busy for so long that we want to give it a refuge. And two of the refuges that we can give it that are so steadying for the mind is the breath and the use of mantra, which of course we'll get more into this evening. And we've been doing those practices for a great deal of time. And mantra is a profound refuge for the mind to take a place to be quiet and at ease, to come back to during the day, during meditation. So right now, just allowing your awareness to rest on the breath. And if you'd like to add mantra, if you'd like to add the mantra Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Once on the inhalation, once on the exhalation, or faster or slower, whatever feels comfortable. But when the mind combines the repetition of mantra along with the breath, it really then is able to set aside more and more of the other distractions, the other things that have absorbed us throughout the day, and come to a calmer, more centered place. So in a few minutes, we're going to start, and we'll be starting with the opening mantras. And again, that sheet that was linked and is on the Anam Cara website, if you have that, or if you know these mantras, the mantras that we do on the weekly programs at Anam Cara, there's two sets of mantras that we use for opening mantras. One, the Ganesh mantras. And many people are familiar with the archetypal form of Ganesh. And Ganesh symbolizes the power of the infinite to remove obstacles. And it's particularly interesting to me that Ganesh is this dancing elephant, and there's a long history to where that image comes from. And that one of the things that to me is so touching about Ganesh is he's the remover of obstacles, and he's this joyous dancer. He's usually posed on one foot or his arm is up and he's dancing. So he's not like, oh, I gotta grunt and bear it and move through the obstacles. Dance, join the dance. He's the son of the Lord of the dance, the Nataraj, the Shiva Nataraj. So the Lord Shiva, the dance. So we have to learn, even when the music changes and everything is altered, how do we join the dance? And then how do we move through that with grace, with the company of others, both finding the moments of delight as well as dealing with the moments of profound challenge. So we're going to start now with those opening mantras. Again, if you know them, chant at home. If you want to bring it up while we're chanting and go to the website and get them, that's fine. But I'm going to start chanting those. And if you don't know them, just listen. You know, as I say, and the texts have said for thousands of years, the power of mantra really isn't in the meaning of mantra, it's in the throb of consciousness that's encoded in sound, that was heard in deep meditation and then brought out by these ancient sages and rishis. So it would serve as a vehicle for taking us back to the heart of the divine within. So we'll start with the opening mantras. Namaste, welcome again. I'm just going to ask my wife, do you see the
Yes.
So it's such a privilege for me to be able to welcome you. Some of you have been to this space. This is, if you've been here, you recognize this is my living room. So we get to have satsang from my living room, and I get to welcome you all with all my heart into my home, even if it's virtually. And my privilege to be able to be here with you and offering what we usually do every week. But in some ways, it's wonderful we get to offer it on a bigger scale. So we have people from as far away as, I think it's New Zealand and Australia, Canada, West Coast. So folks have been able to join us, our extended Sangha. And hopefully as people come to know what we're offering here on Thursday evenings, others will be able to join us and make use of what we can give. You know, Anam Cara, as a nonprofit organization, our mission is to make meditation available to everyone and make meditation from a variety of different perspectives. It's not just singular, just, Buddhist or just Christian or just Hindu or yogic. What I try to offer is the various ways that we can access this state of consciousness, this state of being in really the heart of the divine, our true nature. And to access that, well, that's been the goal of all spiritual traditions. And so we've discovered that there are wonderful, powerful, valid ways of entering that from many different directions. And that's part of what we try to share. Even the picture behind me is a specific form of the Mahakali Yantra. But, you can see in that particular form, what surrounds it is what's known as the four-gated city. There's the square with the little rectangles on each side. Well, that represents the four cardinal directions. So you'll see that in many different yantras have that form around them. And it's a way of symbolizing that the divine within, because within that is where you see then these archetypal pictures and symbolic forms of the infinite, but it's approachable from all directions. So the four cardinal directions represented in the four-gated city represent that we can approach the infinite from any direction and find our way into that. And so that is much of what we try to offer through the Anam Cara Meditation Foundation in our routine programs, our website, our e-newsletter. We were supposed to have a retreat this weekend. And of course, because of the terrible things going on with COVID-19, we're postponing that to the autumn. So that will be Halloween weekend. If anybody's able to join us, everybody's welcome. And the title of that is Living Meditation, Deepening and Integrating Practices. So it's a retreat for really expanding our practice, deepening our practice, having the pleasure of Sangha, getting together with other like-minded seekers and sharing the stories of our paths and gaining support from each other on that. And that's also part of what we're trying to do here this evening, is be able to offer a means when we have to isolate in certain ways because of this infection, that we get to join and enter a space that really transcends time and place. The heart of meditation, that's beyond any location, any particular time. And that's why when we read even, the words of the Buddha or the ancient sages from thousands of years ago, there is real and relevant and clear today for what our endeavor is to access that eternal space of that loving consciousness that we call the divine by many different names. And that's what we're really about. So this week typically would be a chanting night. Now we don't have Bernhard, he's online with us. We don't have a drummer here. So we'll be doing some slower meditative chants. Next week is the fourth Thursday of the month. And so that's the night that we usually do the Buddhist practice of the Heart Sutra and talk about the profound meaning that comes out of the contemplation of that work and the words of Buddha for going beyond everything. So this evening, we'll be doing chanting, we'll be doing meditation, and the meditation will be a silent meditation as it usually is, but we'll be doing chanting beforehand. And just having the chance to be together in that space of the heart. The heart of meditation is the heart of who we are. This is really one of the most profound truths that comes out of the meditative traditions, is that we're so typically involved in the mind and the actions of our everyday life, and our whole entire sense of identity is tied up with that. And with that comes the stress of having to deal with fending off assaults, feeling threatened, going through states of joy because we accomplished one thing or another, but then something else comes along that challenges that. And so the ordinary mind rides up and down all these different waves of change and thought and feeling and everything like that. And that's part of the rich tapestry of life that we're given. what helps to balance that, and this is what the ancient yogis and sages and everybody who has pursued these practices up until now continues to discover, is when you can really access the heart of meditation, the heart of the divine, it doesn't take away from that, oh yes, the mind goes through all these things and we experience them. It adds this dimension of the eternal. It adds this dimension of what's the profound consciousness that really holds all of that experience, that embraces all of our humanity, and also reveals our transcendent nature, the ray of the divine that we are. And that's the quality of that boundless love, and that begins to be able to see, even in the midst of all that turmoil that life brings, there's this underlying quality of this loving embrace, so that eventually one can come to know, and this is very real, that in every moment you are completely loved, you are completely lovable. That we can know in every moment that everything about us is in the divine embrace. This is what we need to know. Not knowing that creates such an emptiness that drives people in so many ways to be greedy, power hungry, everything else. That's a state of delusion. But to know the root of who we truly are, and to be able to live from that space, and then bring the creativity, bring the inspiration, bring the embrace of that into everyday life. This is what meditation offers. So it goes way beyond, what gets popularly distributed and consumed, because we're a consumer culture, as meditation for mindfulness and peak performance. I get called upon by executives to teach in those ways, and it's beneficial, but we shouldn't confuse that with the fullness of what meditation offers. Meditation offers us access to a state that is continuous. It's a state of consciousness that embraces all of the waking state, all of the dream state, all of the deep sleep state, and then goes beyond it. So to know that is to know what embraces all of life and transcends it simultaneously. That's the great mystery that unfolds in the profound practices of meditation. So that's what we endeavor through the Anam Cara Meditation Foundation, is to share different ways that we can enter into that and begin to get a taste of that. So it's not just somebody talking about it or something we read about in some ancient text, but that this is the birthright of every human being, to know this and know this completely, to have your being saturated in that wisdom and knowing. So we keep coming back to the practices that open that profound state of meditation. I wanted to share a couple of poems that often help us bring our mind back into the heart. And this one is by the great poet Saint Kabir. And so this is a poem called The Caller. And Kabir, the poet saint, writes, "I don't know what sort of God we have been talking about. The caller calls in a loud voice in the Holy One to the Holy One at dusk. Well, why? Surely the Holy One is not deaf. He hears the delicate anklets that ring on the feet of an insect as it walks. Well, you can go over and over your beads. You can paint weird designs on your forehead. You can wear matted hair. It can be long, it can be ostentatious. You can wear turbans. But when deep inside, there is still a loaded gun, how can you have God?" This is the call for meditation. How do we get past what invokes that kind of anger and all the other emotions that are tied with the ordinary mind, rather than bringing us into the internal, the fold of that divine love? that it's in the heart of every being. You know, Kabir, and this was one of the favorite quotes of my teacher, Swami Muktananda, and it was from Kabir. And Kabir wrote one time, you can break a temple, you can break a mosque, you can destroy a church, but never break a human heart. For God has never dwelled in those others, but in every human heart. That's where you'll find God, within each and every one of us. And meditation is the practice for going into that. This is another one of Kabir's poems. It's called The Hearse. Kabir writes, the spiritual athlete often changes the color of his clothes, and his mind remains gray and loveless. He sits inside a shrine room all day so that the divine has to go outdoors and praise the rocks. Or he drills holes in his ears, his beard grows enormous and matted. People mistake him for a goat. He goes out into wilderness areas, strangles his impulses, and makes himself neither male nor female. He shaves his skull, puts his robe in an orange vat, reads the Bhagavad Gita, and becomes a terrific talker. Kabir says, actually, you are going in a hearse to the country of death, bound hand and foot. So it's not about the externals that we can so easily put on. One of my early teachers was Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and he used to talk a lot about spiritual materialism. And part of that was all the ways that we adopt on a material level, you know, the ordinary mind trying to be spiritual, and that can be clothes and beads and all kinds of things. But what's transformed inside? How do we live? Truly live the wisdom of knowing. How do we do the work that brings us there? So easy to change our clothes, so easy to put on a hat, a turban, or whatever. How do we change the color of our heart so that it's transparent? Transparent to the living flame of love that's within each and every one of us. That's the call. That's the call. And that's the call we need to hear and answer now. You know, in this time, especially of such devastating hardship around the world, in our own communities, it's a call for that compassion, that love, that we hold that space, that we do what we can do, not because it's some huge act that's going to save, you know, thousands of thousands. Who's going to call our neighbor and say, hey, are you all right? Who's going to look in on somebody that just needs that little bit of attention and care to know that there's somebody out there? You're the eyes and ears, the hands of God. That's you. No more time, you know, for just praying for a miraculous appearance of something else. You're the miraculous appearance. By what miracle have you come into this world and come to a place now where you have the wisdom to be looking beyond the ordinary mind? That's your gift. So bringing that love, bringing that care, bringing that attention, that's the radical act right now. In a culture that has put profits and consumption above everything else, to act selflessly, to act lovingly, to not care about consuming another thing, that's a radical act. So bring the freedom that you have into the world in that way, to the loving kindness, the compassion, the presence, the embrace of others. And also the embrace of our own mind and bodies. Our mind and bodies suffer. They are caught up and identified and caught in this world. So our consciousness has to relate to our mind and body with great compassion, with love, with kindness, to strengthen ourselves in order to be fully present and be able to serve. This is what we do. So we're going to be chanting the mantra Om Namah Shivaya now for a few minutes. And Om Namah Shivaya is one of the what's known as a Maha Mantra, the great mantras. And it's the mantra of the lineage, the Siddha lineage that I trained under with Swami Muktananda. And so it's been seen as a conduit of the power of the divine. And we can think of that as the Holy Spirit, as the Shekinah, as Shakti, so many different names, so many different names for water, but in the end it's all water, so many different names for the divine and the power of the divine, and yet that's all the same. And so Om Namah Shivaya, it literally means I bow to, I honor the divine within ourselves and within everyone and everything. So it's a call to the mind to let go of itself and go beyond, just disappear into that. So as the mind becomes absorbed in the mantra, then the mantra will become silent. And in becoming silent, it silences the mind by having it absorbed into the infinite, its source, its home. You know, the true home of the mind, and the reason why it's not restless until it gets home, is God. That's the true home. Until we can take refuge there, the mind is going to be restless. So when we discover that through meditation, through the practices, we can take refuge in our own home. That's the divine. You're the living embodiment of that. So we set aside this thought and that thought, come back to the mantra. Set aside feelings, memories, things about the past, things about the future, and keep inviting the mind. Now come back home. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And we're doing it with the awareness of I am the divine, I am the infinite. The mantra is a throb of that infinite, where your body, your mind, everything about you is a throb of the infinite. All there is energy. Even Einstein figured that out. What he didn't know was all the energy of the infinite, the divine, throbbing with consciousness, pulsating with love. So when we are able to use the vehicle of mantra to enter that space, we enter the heart of meditation. The heart of meditation is the heart of God. That's where you belong. That's where your mind will find absolute peace, absolute rest. So we're going to chant Om Namah Shivaya for a few minutes, and then just sit in the stillness. And during the stillness, just keep inviting the mind. Oh, come back. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Oh We end with this prayer. And may all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining us this evening from all over around the globe, and we've added to putting out the highest embrace of the world. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. And really, meditation is all about both calming the mind, healing the body, but in essence, entering that space of the heart where the divine rests, because that's the level of healing we each and every one of us need, and the world needs. We need to be able to act and walk in congruence with the infinite, with the divine. We're all an embodiment of that. We're all, that is our source. So we need to bring that knowingly, consciously into this world. And so follow the path of meditation until you know what all the great sages and saints have said for thousands of years. There's never a time, there's never a place when you're not in the loving embrace of God. Until you know that, fan the flames of meditation. Let it burn away anything that stands between you and knowing that moment by moment. That's what we're here for, to walk that into the world. So again, with all my heart, with all my love, thank you for being with me this evening.